Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 9 of the Chronicles of Tyria Lorecast. I will be your main host here, Lagwyn, and I am here with Bromms.
I can run faster than a Centaur! You're supposed to stop this second.
Oh, yeah, sorry. he does have very good sayings for each thing.
Yeah,
So,
I don't know about good, but...
we'll call him Bromtron. That's what you'll be. Like
Great.
Jontron with Bromms.
Yes.
And Alucardalina.
Hello.
So, keeping up with our revisiting the lore of the main 5 races of Guild Wars 2, we will be picking up where we left off with the final race to talk about, the humans. This has the potential to be a very quick lorecast, given the fact that some of these things we can kind of glance over for the humans. The origin of the humans outside of the game is pretty self-explanatory. The origins of the humans in the game is a little bit more interesting in the fact that the humans are actually an alien race to Tyria, not officially part of Tyria, were brought here by the human gods at some point for some unknown reason, which we're still wondering if we'll ever find that out, which I hope we do, because that could be the potential to be a very interesting plot twist.
Yeah, like if the gods were actually like evil and they brought humans here to take over the world or something.
That, again, it very well could be, for all we know. And the other, people speculate maybe it was like a post-apocalyptic kind of situation where the world that the humans lived in was used up, or there was something happened and then they needed to get out. Or, maybe they're evil, or maybe it was just they're, curious.
Yeah.
And they just wanted to go exploring. But I think that's more or less all we really know, again, about that, is that the humans are alien to Tyria, and they came here and they caused a lot of ruckus with certain other races, specifically the Char. But that's pretty much it for the history, or the origin, I should say. Do you guys have anything else to add to the origin?
Not really. If I remember correctly, they first appeared in the Canthan region, and then they kind of spread out from there.
And I could be wrong, and I feel like maybe Claire could correct me here, but it seemed like they kept changing where and when the humans came, because originally I thought that they were supposed to have landed in Or initially.
Huh.
That's why the human gods made their city in Ara. But then there's also thoughts that they went to Cantha first,
Yeah.
then, or maybe Alona first. Cantha was the furthest south, so that would make the most sense. And then worked their way north, maybe went through Alona, and then settled on Or as their final kind of resting place where they were going to hang, where they were officially settled down. But I thought I remembered there was, like, between this game and the official lore, that there were some conflicting kind of reports about where the official...
The official Guild Wars wiki says that Aura was the first region colonized.
Interesting. Okay.
Okay, because I thought I remember something else saying that Cantha was the first place.
Yeah, I do remember something along that as well.
Yeah, so I think this is just kind of one of those, and that might have been something that came up from this game, where they kind of they said one thing in one game, kind of like we had some of those arguments just the past couple lore shows, where we're like, oh, well, the Char don't grow crops and vegetables, so they wouldn't grow any, and then Claire's like, nope, you're wrong.
Yeah.
And then like, well,
if we play on semantics, it says that Aura was the first region colonized.
Oh, okay, I gotcha.
They could have been in Cantha first, but decided that it was unsuitable.
Well, that's interesting, given and we'll kind of touch on that a little bit when we talk more about where the humans are right now. But that, is kind of interesting about how xenophobic they've become, that maybe the human gods left because it was unsettleable, but now everybody there is like, oh no, humans only, no Char allowed. It's kind of an interesting. Again, some of this is speculation here because we don't really know, but we do have conflicting reports from ArenaNet.
It also kind of makes sense from in the game because you have to think that with all of the problems they've had recently, it wouldn't be a surprise if they had lost some of their history, and so maybe one scholar says this and the other one says something else that's contradictory. So from an in-game standpoint, it kind of makes sense that there's not an absolute version of that.
And I guess that kind of makes a little bit of sense too, because the way that different humans of different regions see the different gods or have different calendars, because I think if I remember correctly, the Alonans use dynastic reckoning, or no, the Canthans use dynastic reckoning as their calendar system, which is tied off of the dynasties, Canthan dynasties, if memory serves. And then everybody else, the Crichtons use the Mavellian calendar. So it's just, so that could kind of also make sense that the different areas have different scholars believe different things, and it kind of just got lost. And especially with the tidal wave that destroyed a lot of the ancient texts and things, that could also be possible. Alright, so that is human origin in a nutshell. Next, we usually kind of talk about the history of the humans, and I mean, on the most basic level of us, if we didn't want to do any work, we would just say, go play Guild Wars 1. But I also point you to several of our human-related episodes in the past. We did the original human one. We talk a lot about the history of the humans up until Guild Wars 2. So we're not going to go too in-depth into anything here because we figure we'll focus more on what's happened in Guild Wars 2, since we kind of already talked about Guild Wars 1. You can also check out our... we'll talk about it again briefly here, but we did another podcast in the past about the White Mantle and the Mersat and things like that. So those also are heavily tied to human history, so you might want to check those out. But I do have one little quick line I snagged from good old Decimus and his Movement of the Worlds. So, for centuries, humans dominated the continent of Tyria, but over the last 250 years that has changed. Humanity clings by a thread, maintaining its cities only through the absolute dedication of its armies. Ascalon city fell. Rin belongs to the Char. Lion's Arch, inundated by tidal waves, was rebuilt by the mercenary guilds, and Or rose into undeath and corruption. The gods of the humans have been notably distant these past 2 centuries, withdrawing into silence even as the world beneath them shattered. Although they still answered prayers, they do not intervene, even as Tyria crumbles and the human race calls out desperately for heroes to save them from their darkening struggle. So that is Decimus's brief overview of where the humans have been in the past 250 years. I would also like to point out, too, just the kind of interesting twist that ArenaNet kind of went by turning the typical fantasy trope on its head with the humans in Guild Wars 2. Because normally, the human race in most fantasy things are the kind of upstart race. The elves are the ones that have been here for forever, and they're the kind of twilight, race that's on their way out, that have been in the world for forever. And ArenaNet kind of flopped that by making the humans the kind of race that's been around for the longest time and is phasing out, and the Sylvari, the elfish of all the races in Guild Wars, are the kind of new race that's new to Tyria, and I kind of find that refreshing.
Yeah, it's I actually kind of had to stop when I was reading some things on the wiki because it basically says that other races view the humans as traditional and conservative race, dying out and doomed to disappear, just as the dwarves were. It's interesting because, like, in fantasy things, you would never have those 2 races compared. I guess it's nice that they're not exactly the same as they are in every other fantasy universe.
I blame Tolkien for most of that. I mean, not in a negative way, but Tolkien fantasy has influenced the majority of most fantasy that we see today. whether
Yeah.
that be, Dungeons and Dragons or EverQuest or, things like that are all kind of have the typical tropes of the dwarves are these, they're an ancient race that's been around for forever. The elves have been around for forever, and the humans are these, upstart hooligan kids that come in and are trying to take over. And, the dwarves are dead. The elves are the new race, and the humans are on their way out the door clinging to life. So
Yeah.
I think that us as like actual humans find it kind of hard to believe too. I mean, you see how populous we are in our own world, and then when you look at Tyria and they're dying out, and it's kind of creepy.
Yeah.
And I feel like it almost, at least to some extent, it almost strikes a chord.
Yeah.
That primal kind of survival instinct as a player. Granted, there are players that barely play humans or don't play humans at all.
I don't know anybody like that.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't know anybody like that. But I feel like a lot of, even if you don't play a human, I feel like if you do, or you can kind of sympathize ish with the humans because you are a human. You have that kind of like, well, okay, and humans come in, they cause this destruction, but now we're trying to hold on to the last little bit of life we have, trying to have festivals and trying to celebrate our queen, and other races come in and screw it up.
Yeah, it definitely gives them more dimensions than they usually have, which I appreciate, because in most games, it's really painful to play humans because they're just annoying, and they don't seem to be all that similar to how we are, but in this game, they feel, I hate to say this because it sounds so silly, but they seem more human in this game than in other games. They're just more real. They're not as I can't think of the right word for it. They're just not caricatures of humans.
Yeah, I definitely can see what you're saying by them being more actual humans than the typical personification of what it is to be, a human ignorant of other races and come in and, we'll do whatever we want. And we're really, all of a sudden, we're like the best at figuring out, the little bit of everything. We might not be the best crafters, but we're as adequate of crafters as we are as farmers and this, that, and the other thing. And,
one thing I would like to point out is you kind of get like this sense, if you're out in the world, that you're dwindling down as humans because there's just so much turmoil and problems that you just see in like every human settlement.
Yeah, no, you're right. It is kind of, I definitely, like I said, I don't always play humans with the exception of Dungeons and Dragons just because of the bonuses that they get. You can't beat extra skill points and an extra feat at first level. But, again, not to digress, but I usually tend to gravitate more towards the elven race in most fantasy. And I'm most drawn to humans in Guild Wars 2. And again, maybe that's because of my history with Guild Wars 1. That might be part of it. But I think it's just because they're so, starkly different than the humans you see everywhere else in fantasy. But, again, that sounds like more of a discussion and less of an actual lore, so why don't we move on? So let's talk history of the humans as it pertains to Guild Wars 2. So, like I said, let's start 250 years ago, end of Guild Wars 1 time, and we'll go forward. So, take it away, somebody.
Go for it, Claire.
Oh goodness.
I can cover some stuff if need be, but I figured I'd give somebody else a chance to shine.
Yeah. Well, basically, that's the 250 years, before we're still having our problems with the Char, and we're trying to take back everything from the Searing, but of course we're losing it. We're losing it very badly, and of course King Adalbern decides to do his thing and create the faux fire when the Char are marching into Ascalon City. And this kind of wipes out the rest of Ascalon, which is a very important event because that is our second civilization hub that is destroyed. Those people become the ghosts who, they're then on, just kind of keep Ascalon away from the Char. But nobody has Ascalon anymore. At the same time, you know, we're dealing with Emperor Soko, who decided that any non-human races needed to just go from Cantha. And they decided that Cantha was going to be isolationist, and they didn't even really contact Tyria anymore. And at that point, when the dragons rose, that Cantha was cut off anyway. As for Ilona, we know that Paulo Ajoko dammed the Ellen River, which caused a famine. And because of this famine, he was able to kind of take over the humans because they were weakened by hunger and lack of pretty much everything. And he eventually takes full control over Ilona. And he is making it kind of impossible to get to Ilona. And Zaitan is, of course, making it not so happy across the sea. So the wave that was created by Zaitan when he awoke, it crashed into Lion's Arch, which we of course know was kind of the other human civilization hub.
Yeah.
It was at the time.
Yeah.
That's where the castle was and their kingdom, and so that's all in CSRs, which I have to highly suggest reading if you haven't.
Yes, definitely read it.
Because I'm not going to go into that.
Right.
It is too good to spoil.
Exactly.
So Lion's Arch was destroyed. They abandoned it, and it was eventually founded by pirates, while Divinity's Reach was becoming the new central hub for humans, and the only one left in Tyria. Since Lion's Arch was a multiracial hub at this point. Of course, Queen Salma was declared queen after her long line of everything, yeah. Sorry.
She descended from Adalburn, didn't she? Isn't that how it worked out?
Did she?
You talking about Salma or Jennah?
Yeah, Salma.
Well, she was the rightful queen of of Kryta, right? I'm thinking.
Yeah,
I'm working this out.
King Doric.
Yeah, King. So she's a descendant
Doric.
of Doric.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, Adalburn, something totally separate. Yeah, after the events of War in Kryta, which is the us returning her to the throne.
And then her line helped to kind of create Divinity's Reach, and that's when their struggles against like Centaurs and Bandits began happening.
And we will pick up from that in just a sec. So to kind of sum some of that up, and just to bring up a couple of little interesting tidbits. One, Adalburn died in the faux fire, therefore ending the line of the Ascalonian kings. That was the end of that royal line. And we had Salma, descended from Doric, who we assume is somewhat tied to Queen Jennah. but I don't think we have anything concrete, really, lore-wise in the game yet to figure out that they're the same lineage. And we know of one other king prior, and a son that we learn about in Sea of Sorrows that I am assuming are related to Queen Jennah in some way. But again, this is kind of just speculation at this point. I don't know, you guys didn't come across anything tying Jennah to Salma in any way, did you?
I thought I read somewhere that she was a descendant of Doric, and like she was related to Salma in that way. But
Yeah. I'm reading now, and it's true. She's labeled as Queen of Kryta and Regent of Ascalon, descendant of Queen Salma, and thus of Queen Doric.
Okay. Well, there you have it. And that's just from the wiki, I take it?
Yeah.
Alright, so there you go. Problem solved. Let's see, what else do I have? To touch a little bit more on Cantha, the reason that Emperor Usoku was able to kind of rule over and make these decisions is that his armies were able to conquer the Kurziks and the Luxons, which, if you know from Guild Wars 1, were a pretty much the whole driving factor once you get off the starting island of in the factions campaign. But two fairly large factions of people that were constantly at war with one another, and Usoku kind of came in with his armies, dominated both of them, and then forced them under his control, therefore unifying all of Cantha for the first time in probably hundreds, thousands of years. So he was he was supported again by the Ministry of Purity, which is, you learn about them in doing the Winds of Change Guild Wars Beyond content, which the Ministry of Purity was originally formed to combat the Afflicted and clear them out of Cantha, but they ended up helping, and the Ministry of Purity has taken on a kind of new task in that they're more purity as in humans only, and so they've kind of taken on a slightly different role. And again, as Claire mentioned, we've been pretty much cut off completely, although there are handfuls of humans here and there that talk about Cantha. As you like, just random ones walking around Divinity's Reach, you might hear Cantha mentioned.
I assume they probably own private boats.
Yeah, and I thought I remember someone...
necessary trading.
And I thought I remember somebody saying something like, oh, I have family in Cantha, but I haven't heard from them. But that doesn't really make sense.
Yeah.
I mean, I could be wrong. But...
No, I think you're right, because I think I remember hearing that same thing. It sounds very familiar anyway.
Yeah. And then again, we also know through the Zephyrite now that there could be trade between us and Cantha indirectly.
Mm-hmm.
Although, are the Zephyrite all humans? Do we know? I can't remember.
I know there were some Norn.
Okay, and I think there were some Asura as well.
Yeah, I think they kind of get picked up along the way.
So then I don't know. I mean, we know through some of the items and things scattered around the Zephyrite, you know, the labyrinthine cliffs and the Zephyr Sanctum, that they definitely had interaction with Cantha at some point. But how they would trade if they're so anti-other races, unless they only sent human envoys to do the trading, which is a possibility. Just an interesting little factoid. Again, obviously, Or Rose, so that's that human settlement. Kryta, we pretty much get to experience wholeheartedly as playing as a human character, and we can see where we're kind of at with Ascalon if you play as a Char, running through any of the Char areas. I highly recommend doing the story mode of Ascalonian Catacombs if you're interested in the faux fire and all definitely. That. Ritlock kind of sums most of it up right there for you in the beginning. Also, go read Ghosts of Ascalon, the first Guild Wars novel. That also does a great job of explaining the faux fire and the greater impact that has. And it also tells you the two different sides, the human side of the story and the Char side of the story. And then I leave it up to you to figure out which one you believe to be true, even though it's pretty much which side is right. And Alona, as Claire mentioned, kind of ruled by Palo Ajoko, which I feel they very cleverly kind of leave out how basically the reason that he was able to dam the Elon River and this evil undead lich is able to rule over an entire continent is all of the Guild Wars 1 players' fault.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's our fault.
Because the Guild Wars 1 players, pretty much, they only care about themselves, I've decided.
I just say blame it on Cormier.
Okay. I'll go for that.
Cool.
But
we can have stupid ideas.
Yeah. We're like, we don't know how to get where we need to go. We need to stop all this Abaddon Rising stuff. Well, we can raise this evil undead lich who's been around for forever. And, you know, the enemy of my enemy is my friend kind of a situation, and he can help us defeat Abaddon.
Sure,
No wonder we're dying.
So, yeah, right. So we do that. And then we defeat Abaddon, and we're like, alright, peace out, Palawa. We're heading back up to Tyria. We gotta go deal with some crap up in the Shiver Peaks. We're out. And then we leave. And we just damn, no pun intended, Ilona with Palawa Joko. We just leave him there. And we're just like, see you later.
You think that with Cormier being a goddess now,
Yeah.
she'd probably do something about that.
Yeah. A goddess from Istan who grew, you know, was like, you would think she would favor Ilona over any of the other. I mean, she's a god, so she can't really play favorites, but you know.
Yeah, but she's a goddess now, so she's probably like, yeah, I don't need to do nothing now.
I deserve this.
It's break
She
time.
couldn't see it coming.
She went there. Oh man. But yeah, so we basically Palawa Joko, his usefulness to us at that moment in time doesn't exist anymore, so we just leave.
Yeah.
And we leave him there, this evil undead lich, now alive.
It's not like undead liches have caused us any problem in the past, so...
Yeah, clearly. It's not like we've ever had trouble with that at all. You know, trying to... the doors of Kamali and all that lovely stuff with Vizier Kilbron. So yeah, then we just go off to go deal with stuff in the north and help fight Primordus. But, like, just forget about Ilona. And now Palawa Joko is like, well, I guess I'll just pick up where I left off when I died the first time. So there we go. My big question that I've always wondered is that we've defeated Zaitan. Spoiler alert, not really, because the game's been out for over a year.
Yeah.
But we defeated Zaitan. Palawa Joko is a lich and has the ability to control the undead. Are Zaitan's minions totally gone now? The fact that that Zaitan is dead? Do the Risen just crumple and die? Does Palawa Joko have the ability to take them under his control and now therefore bolster his army even further?
There's your answer for
How's
the
Tequatl?
Yeah.
It's all Palawa Joko.
But there's also theories that Zaitan isn't really dead. Cause...
I don't know. I've heard there's a lot of different back and forth on that, but...
Yeah.
Palawa just brings him back.
I was going to say, what if Palawa just brings Zaitan back, yeah.
Now we'll bring him back in a couple years to fight something else. And then,
Yeah. Guys, we're going to head to Cantha now, but, like, we need to fight off Falcatoric. So we're going to raise Zaitan to fight Falcatoric, and then we're heading to Cantha. Peace out.
See ya.
And then that'll be the ending before Guild Wars 3 comes out.
Exactly.
So, oh, sorry, Kryta's. Oh, Kryta. Yeah. Oh.
We'll call it Guild Wars 3. It's not our problem.
Yeah, exactly. I plan on doing more of like a story time with Lag, Master Lag Theater, where I have a bunch of texts that I found, just long, lengthy texts that do a fairly good job of describing a lot of these in depth, but it's too long to just sit here and it would be boring just to read everything off. So I may go into a little bit more of that in the future, but let's move on. So Bromms, you wanted to talk physiology of the humans.
Actually, well, I guess I don't know if you really want to count this in as history or there's some things that Jennah has done more recently that are important, but maybe we can just talk about that when we talk about her.
Okay.
But yeah, physiology. You know what humans are.
Yep.
Look in the mirror. That's what they are, pretty much.
That's
There's really no difference that as far as I know anyway, that we've come across from us and the humans in Guild Wars 2. So, or in the Guild Wars universe.
Humans in the Guild Wars universe can't have tattoos.
Yeah, what the heck?
It's a Norn-centric thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So apparently their bodies reject ink, but otherwise they're pretty much the same.
It makes it really difficult when they need to like write something down quick on their arm. Totally just gone. You're like, don't forget to call. Don't forget to send a mail letter to mom, and then just gone.
Exactly.
All right, let's talk human. Again, this is another one of those ones that's kind of easy to skip over. Human culture.
Yeah, it's interesting because they're one of the more diverse cultures in the game, because like we talked about, there's Cantha and Alona, and all of that kind of factors into human society now, although not to such a large degree. But like even in Divinity's Reach, we have the Alonian district, and it's very different than the rest of the city. It's very Alonian in design, and we even have people that have descended from these other cultures and try to keep those cultural rituals and whatnot. So whereas in other societies you don't really see that much of a cultural difference, you have people are more split by what cycle they were born in or what spirit they follow or things like that. But in human society, it's more based on where they had lived and what cultures were, or what the culture was that they had developed in those areas, and then it kind of all comes into a melting pot in Divinity's Reach.
Yeah, like I said, the culture. I mean, I guess the only thing I could say is you do see a little bit of difference between something in, say, Kryta versus Ebonhawk. Ebonhawk is your last bastion of human hope in Ascalon, now that the faux fire has consumed all the human civilizations and they've been resettled by the Char. But if you want to try to get as close as you're going to get, I would say, to Guild Wars 1 humans, it's the humans that live in Ebonhawk. Because they are still set in that, like, the Char are evil, my uncle died fighting the Char, and now the Queen wants to have a treaty that says we should be friends, and I don't go for that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just, and not unfounded reasons in my mind for them to just be like, I'm sorry, who are you, barefoot weirdo who just walks around in some city halfway across the world from me and just tells me, oh, you should like the Char now because I say so. Like, why don't you come walk around barefoot in Ascalon, see how that works out for you? It is weird. I know, like, I just like picking on Naveen because she likes Logan Thackeray, but it is weird that the Queen walks around barefoot. Some hippie queen. I don't know.
Maybe she just has invisible slippers. She's
Mesmer slippers, that must be it.
Exactly.
Better, that's useful for mesmer magic.
One of the things I would like to point out also about the human culture is that we really don't notice this in any other race, but human culture deals a lot with money, like tiers of people just based on money. Like you have your nobles and your street rats and your commoners.
That's true. Yeah, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, in other cultures, it's based on things like honor with the Char, like your station. But yeah, it's a good point with humans.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, wow, that kind of an eye opener there that I didn't even really notice that, because Sylvari really have no concept.
They have firstborn and secondborn and stuff like that, but I mean it's not really based on money like it is with humans.
Yeah, and I mean, Norn, they kind of just do their own thing. I mean, yeah, you're more respected if you've done, been in more battles and blah blah blah. But they don't really have, I mean, again, that's more based on your station, and the Asura are based on, your inventions. But yeah, the human have, and again, this is part of that way that people can actually, players can, sort of relate more to them because they do have different, a more strict class. Well, actually, it's not even that strict of a class structure because you could advance from one to the other relatively quickly depending on, sour investments or some weird, rich relative windfall kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, there definitely is mobility between the different statuses in human culture, which, yeah, like you said, can't really be said with other cultures except downward movement typically.
Yeah, I mean,
It's like, go ahead.
no, I was gonna say you can never be a Sylvari firstborn.
Right.
Yeah.
If you're not one, you can't become one. That doesn't happen.
It's like in human, the nobles, there is even talk around Divinity's Reach about new money and old money.
Yeah.
Well, you guys, again, especially you, Claire, spend more time there than anybody I know, so you probably have the better idea of what kind of gossip goes around Divinity's Reach.
I know all the gossip. I stand around forever in Divinity's Reach. Talk to everybody.
But yeah, I mean, that is really interesting, and it's not, and as far as I can tell, it's not really tied to the district, per se. Like, you might have homeless in one district and nobility within the same district.
The Salma district is a perfect example of that.
Well, yeah, that's our home district.
Yep.
And it could be street rat, commoner, or noble, depending on what choices you make during your personal story, or your character creation, rather. Just a quick line I read here. Of all the races, they hold the best knowledge in history and agriculture. So there you go. Humans are the best farmers, which makes sense, I feel. And you kind of see that in, like, the, outside Beetleton and things like that. There's all the farmlands. How many farmers we need to help with Centaur raids and things like that.
Well, Kryta's got the best soil for that, too. Since, the searing with Ascalon and everything probably ruined the soil quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, Sylvari, I still think it would be weird for Sylvari to grow plants.
Well, they do, but it's like potion stuff mostly.
I know, it's just weird to me. It's like, it's okay. I'm this plant. It's okay. But I can grow you and then kill you, and that's okay. Because, you're lesser than me. What a bunch of pretentious Sylvari. I tell you.
Yeah.
Did you guys have anything else culture-wise?
Yeah, I guess this kind of fits into culture. I feel like humans more so than other races are really into their festivals and their displays, and which makes sense because as we talked about before, they're kind of a race in decline, and so it's understandable that they'd want to kind of forget about that and have these things to kind of raise the morale in the city. But when you walk into Divinity's Reach, it's this super colorful city. Although you can't hear it, there's a big giant like music thing that is supposed to be playing music all the time, and it feels like you're walking into a carnival or like a festival when you walk into that city. And then recently we just had the whole Queen's Gauntlet and all of that stuff was there, and it just it feels like a city that they're trying to ignore their problems by focusing on celebrating other things all the time.
Yeah, because I mean, Sylvari don't really have celebrations. Norn have moots, but those don't seem to be that common in Guild Wars 2.
Right.
Asura, I don't really pick as the celebratory type.
Yeah, I mean they have
the Snap prize.
Yeah, exactly. They have the Snap prize, but you don't really see any evidence of that in the main city. I mean, there's the storyline if you go through Asura, but that's it really.
And that's not even, can't really have been obviously with the existence of Snap as a player or as a character rather, that can't even be that old of an award.
Right.
And the Char have Meettoberfest, I guess, is the only thing I've really seen.
But it's like not anywhere near. I mean, it's kind of close to the main city, but it's not really.
Yeah. But it's not like, Dwayna versus Grent for Winter's Day, which we obviously don't have right now, but
Right.
even still, or Halloween was traditionally a human-centric holiday, and we had, Dragon Bash again was a celebration for all races to enjoy. But then we had the Queen's, you know, the Queen's Gauntlet and the Queen's speech, the whole coronation thing. So yeah, I guess that is true that but again, like you said, they would want to forget about the decline of their race and all the hardships that's going on. So, and I got another just little quick in-game description of the humans. Humans have lost their homeland, their security, and their former glory. Even their gods have withdrawn, and yet the human spirit remains unshaken. These brave defenders of Kryta continue to fight with every ounce of their strength.
That pretty much sums it up.
Yeah. So let's move on from culture. I guess we can talk evil factions, because that could potentially go very quickly depending on how we word this. So who wants to talk? Well, actually, let me preface that by saying Guild Wars 1, being an entirely human-centric game, had the best evil factions ever. But the fact that now we're in Guild Wars 2 and there's 5 other races and it's kind of an overall thing, it's less... The factions are more interesting for the other races, and humans kind of got the short end of the stick.
Well, we are playing our previous faction, so...
Yeah, though that's true too. Yeah, we could play as the Char, so that kind of takes away from the ability to hate the Char. But I mean, again, we'll kind of touch on, the White Mantle and things like that. But for the most part, out of the 5 races, we still kind of have humans, I would say, have the worst in my mind. But I'll let one of you guys talk. Human evil faction.
There's not really a whole... I mean, the obvious evil faction that you first come across are the Bandits. And I think they have more to do in your personal story than they really do in the outside world. I mean, you fight Bandits quite a bit in Queensdale. But as far as like an organized evil faction, they're really kind of lacking. And they don't... I mean, there's some bandits and stuff in the Codicus Manor dungeon, but otherwise, throughout the rest of the game, you don't really see them come up, where you kind of do with the other factions. There hasn't been any kind of lore story, or the living story that has dealt with that aspect of it. So yeah, really, there's just I mean, we don't even know if there's a bandit leader, do we?
I don't know. Claire, do you want to kind of talk a little bit about that, maybe? Or do you have any idea about that?
Well, I don't imagine that they'd have to have a leader if they're just bandits. It's just like an organization that everybody comes to and decides that they may or may not steal from each other as well.
Right. Because we also have the Separatists in Ebonhawk, which are kind of the same thing, but not really. I mean, the Separatists have a reason that they exist. They obviously don't like the treaty with the Char, and they don't think that there should be. And some of the Bandits say things along that nature too, but the Bandits are more just being bandits and less, a cause like the Separatists are. So.
Yeah, the only thing I would kind of mention again is there is talks that they may, that they're in alliance with the Centaurs is a possibility. I think that may even be an actual proven thing by like random little areas of the game. And I think they've tried. There's lore in the game about them trying to align with the Inquest and the Nightmare Court.
Yeah, you can actually see that in the Brisbane Wildlands. You can see bandits talking with Nightmare Court and Inquest members. There's
a heart around it.
Okay. And there is belief that it may be tied to the White Mantle, which was one of the very interesting evil factions of Guild Wars 1. And that's more of a personal story choice as a human, depending on which choice you made. You can there is a symbol, the Bandit Symbol, that you see in a lot of places. People have kind of drawn how it kind of somewhat resembles the White Mantle emblem that we saw in Guild Wars 1. With a little artistic create, an artistic eye and a little bit of license, you could see this, how they somewhat resemble one another. Now, the official Guild Wars 2 wiki flat out says, in modern times, they are behind many of the bandit attacks and attempts to bring down Queen Jennah and the Crichton government.
Huh.
Most are unaware they are still operating, considering them a myth told on Mad King's Day. So people don't even... Wow, that's news to me, actually, as I was reading it. That most people consider them to be a myth, a la Mad King Thorn, until the first Halloween of Guild Wars. So,
I think too, as far as the bandits are concerned, there's a lot of things that point toward the bandits being funded by sources that, like, by the ministry, for instance. Spoiler alert, I guess, on that, but yeah. If you go through the Codicus Manor dungeon, there's a lot of inference there that Codicus is behind the events that take place in that dungeon, and I think you can infer further from that he might be behind funding the bandits because he's unhappy with Queen Jennah's rule, as are a lot of the nobility, because she's responsible for the Treaty with the Char, or partly, I should say, responsible for that. So it makes sense that he would kind of be pulling strings behind the scenes to get her out of power or to cause problems for her, so it looks like she's an inept ruler.
Yeah, I would like to just bring up again to anyone that hasn't, if you're interested in ties of the bandits to the White Mantle, the Unknown Parent storyline is the one that delves into that. There are missions in there, there's a mission called Drawing Out the Cult, which is about drawing out people from the White Mantle, and there's another one called Rending the Mantle, which is another mission, and there are NPCs in there called, White Mantle Cultist, and Chief Inquisitor, and White Mantle Initiate. So there are, if you do the Unknown Parent background in your person when you make your character, there is proof, that there is direct ties. Whether that's the entire bandit organization or just a small subsect of them is a different story. But yeah, I just figured I would bring your attention to that. It's definitely worth playing.
I went through that storyline, and if you're going to go through it, don't expect a lot of information.
Yeah.
The way it came across to me is that these people wanted to follow in the footsteps of the White Mantle.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's entirely correct, but that's how it came across to me. And just therefore aren't really actually White Mantle, but just kind of a cult.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So, I guess that's, I don't know, do you guys have anything else about the bandits, really?
No, it's unfortunate that we don't know more about them, but they're just not... They're really not that interesting as they're shown now. And, yeah, I mean, until we know more kind of what their whole thing is, if it is any more involved than just, robbing from people or unhappiness with the monarchy, until then, I think it's kind of, there's not really anything to pull from there.
I think we should have an expansion. I think they should be hiding out in the west in the Mahima there, because that's where the Bloodstones were.
Yeah, that would make sense, especially if there is ties or, of any kind to the White Mantle. Would be very interesting. They somehow are tied to the Bloodstones. I would love, and I feel like, we kind of got, again, humans kind of got the short end of the stick with the living story updates. I mean, while yes, Queen Jennah and all that makes a lot of sense, as a good festival and things like that, I feel like the humans definitely, we had the Flame and Frost, which was pretty cool for the Norn, and and the Char.
Mm-hmm.
And we kind of have the Super Adventure Box, which is kind of not exactly story, 100%, but that showcases how awesome some Asura can be. And Scarlet's a Sylvari, and it's not really specifically tied to the Sylvari, But, you know, and then we have, like, let's celebrate our queen.
Yeah, but a human won the pirate captain vote, so, you know, there's that.
I mean, I guess, but
We don't talk about that, right?
that really could have gone either way.
I was just rubbing that in there for you.
Yeah. But anyway, but I would love a, you know, like a bandit, really a bandit centric living story, just like I would love a nightmare court centric story and an inquest centric story. I mean, we have had some inquesty stuff in some of the previous living story and ties to different things, but like rather than introducing these new things like the Aether Blades,
Right.
let's focus on what we have and like let's get like, you know, maybe we talk about the next 5 months, and I get that it's all about tying everything together, grand scheme of things, but I'd be okay if we didn't. You know, if we had like this month is going to be a human-centric one, and we're going to do it's all about the bandits. But every race can play in it, but it
Right.
bolsters the human side. And then the next month's going to be Son of Svanir one, and we bolster the Norn, and, you know, that way we could get that kind of stuff.
Especially if it gives those factions more depth, because that's kind of something we've talked about with all of these for the most part, is that we have an idea of what these evil factions are, but they're all kind of still fairly shallow, and I think it's partly because you only see them for a very short time during your personal story, and then you get moved on to other bigger things. You know, except in the case of like the Char, where they're the Char and the Norn. But yeah, I agree. It'd be nice if they would expand on those more, because I'm sure they have some kind of cool thing going on with the bandits. They're not just, you know, a bandit organization. At least I'd hope not. It'd be really nice to see that there's actually some reason that, you know, maybe there is somebody funding them that has alternate plans, and is actually a significant threat to the humans, and so that's why, you know, all the other races have to help fight against them, or just something more than, oh, we're gonna steal your stuff.
Yeah, you know, I don't want to get hung up on all this, but this is definitely good discussion topics. Because I really feel like all of what I just said, like one for each of the races, could then lead up to what I've been, I don't know when I came up with this, but the best, we'll talk about this more in the podcast on Thursday, but like the best living story update, and it's going to be, the living story update's going to be called Heroes of Tyria, right? That's the name of and it focuses on the players and making the player's character more in like part of the story. I mean, and yes, it would be, you know, you could go in with other players, you know, and do it with them, but essentially it, like, you know, it's going in to build like your character story. So like I play it and I feel like that my character is really great in, you know, whatever sense of the word, and then Bromms, you do it and it's the same thing, but it just gives you a personal feeling like your hero has done something and like they're important. Because
Right.
I feel like we're really lacking that at this point. I don't know, that's just me.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
We're digressing from humans.
Can I bring up something about the bandits?
Yes, you can. That would be the best idea, actually.
One of the things that I've also noticed is that every other race's kind of evil faction, they target like members of the race. But as for the bandits, it seems more like they're targeting our queen than it is just normal people.
Yeah, that's kind of another reason why it feels to me that someone like Codicus, for instance, would be behind them, because they do seem to be more. They seem to have a goal that we don't know about, but it seems to be toward the queen and not just causing problems. I don't know.
I think we're having too much focus on the queen and not on us, and that's why they're not really a fear for us.
Right.
Yeah, because it's you know, we care. I use that term loosely about Queen Jennah, but yeah, it doesn't. We don't personally feel like we're in danger, so we're not really threatened by the bandits as much as, say, you know, the Nightmare Court, which is a Sylvari, should be theoretically a frightening thing for any Sylvari.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's a good point too. That they're not really, and this is again part of my expansion idea that it's not really tied closely to your character, especially now that you bring that up. Yeah, it's more tied towards, the royalty rather than the actual player character. Good pickup on that, Claire. All right, do we have anything else about? I don't think there's much to really talk about the Centaurs. Do you?
No, no.
And again, they could theoretically, because we know that we see the Centaurs as kind of almost like mindless beasts in this game. They do talk and things like that. But you look at someone like Ventari and you realize that they're capable of, a lot of wisdom and knowledge, and could theoretically, if they really wanted to, become quite the threat to the human race if they, through using knowledge and joining together and possibly forming up with really forming a solid alliance with the bandits and things like that. So they could also be an interesting expansion material, a Centaur thing.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to point out that there is a Centaur in Lion's Arch who is being hassled by the humans because they believe him to be a mindless beast, but he actually seems really kind, and I think that if we reached out to every other race like humans have already, that we might be able to form some sort of alliance with some of the Centaurs. Obviously not all of them, but yeah.
We did kind of see that too in Guild Wars 1 through Zed's Shadowhoof in Nightfall, where he was a Centaur and he was, a hero that we were able to unlock, and he came with us. And that does kind of, tie a little bit into how there are different factions of Centaur. And, that's part of it as well, that we have, the Tamini are the ones that we encounter the most as humans. And then Harathi as well. But, maybe there's other different kind of subsects of Centaur that we could ally with to help to maybe try to bring all the Centaurs together and realize, hey guys, it's not that bad.
We gotta fight these dragons first, then we can fight.
Yeah, I was gonna say, let's focus on the big picture here.
That's when we get to play Centaur player characters.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, but you'll never
be a Centaur. You want to bet?
Yeah. I hear you female elementalists talking all that smack about outrunning a Centaur. Let's put your money where your mouth is. Or just human females in general. But did you guys have anything else for evil factions for the humans?
No, I think we pretty much covered it.
All right. How about government? We kind of already touched on the fact that it's just a monarchy.
Yeah, I guess it's a little different than traditional monarchies. There's obviously the line of descendants that kind of dictate who is the ruler. But below the queen, there's also the ministry that we talked about a little bit. And they're the ones that kind of come up with the new laws and give them to the queen to either be approved or not. And then they command the Seraph, which are the guards, and they're basically like the police force in Kryta. Yeah.
Yeah. And that kind of ties in a little bit again. We talked about there's kind of like the military factions, and Casey and Naveen and I kind of did a whole show on that, so we won't really go into the Seraph and the Ministry Guard and the Lion Guard and all that. So the Lion Guard's a little bit different, but or the Ebon Vanguard as well. I guess, key characters really is next up on the list.
I think we were gonna have Logan on the show, but he had to go and run away somewhere, so we couldn't do that.
Yeah, that's actually, yeah, it's unfortunate, but
Oh well.
he had to run away.
Yeah. Well, I will say that my favorite character so far is Countess Anise.
Mm.
She is the master exemplar of the Shining Blade, which, for those that don't know, the Shining Blade basically is like an elite guard that exists to protect the Queen. She was really prevalent in the most recent story with the whole Scarlet thing. Um, she's basically had been working on a plan with the Queen to make sure that Scarlet wasn't able to capture her. But yeah, Anise is just awesome. She's cool.
Yeah. I guess we should also mention real quick that the Shining Blade originally their purpose was to combat the White Mantle in Guild Wars 1, and with the decline of the White Mantle, we've seen them kind of become more of the royal family's kind of personal security force.
Mhm.
But again, if we do see an expansion that builds on the White Mantle or the Bandits, the Shining Blade may, and I think that would actually be extremely interesting if, they're like, oh yes, we're here to guard the Queen and protect the Queen because we fought so hard to put her on the throne in the first place in the War and Kryta content, but then like there's a rising of the White Mantle, and then like they become divided because those that want to help protect the Queen as part of their new duties, but then they're kind of blood bound to fight the White Mantle,
Yeah.
and then there's like a splitting, like who wants to honor their current duty and the things they're really known to do, but who's going to follow the traditional, what the traditional. I mean, again, the fighting the White Mantle will most likely help protect the Queen in the long run, but who's going to stay in Divinity's Reach and who's going to be like, no, sorry, we have to ninja our way into the and go fight the White Mantle.
Right.
That has the potential to be, again, we're just building a living story for ArenaNet left and right here.
I feel like we do that every week now.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yep.
So, yeah, Countess Anise, pretty great. And the Shining Blade, we don't really actually know much about any other Shining Blade, it seems. I don't think.
Yeah. It's okay. She's the only one that matters.
Yeah, that's true. I just recently was redoing the one of the personal stories where you go to Mr. Zamon's or Mr. Wee's estate or whatever when you go to the party to find out information in the Noble storyline, and I didn't realize that one of the Countess or Baroness or whoever you talk to is like, oh, I saw you came here with Countess Anise. What's that about? And you're like, that's none of my business, or whatever you want to say. And she's like, should I be worried? Should I dye my hair red? And I was like, wow, you want to get in my pants. So it's just an interesting little tidbit about Countess Anise.
Well, the other Shining Blade we know is Olivia.
That's true. Very true. You want to talk about Livia? I think you want to talk about Livia.
Not really.
Well,
I didn't get to know her very much.
Okay, then.
Well, maybe we'll see her again.
I would be willing to bet we probably would.
Hey, she had red hair too, right?
Yep.
Yep.
Oh yeah, maybe it's the Shining Blade thing.
Maybe. That could be it. We cracked the code. Red hair equals Shining Blade.
Yes.
Done and done.
I'm gonna make a red hair character, see if I get an invitation.
There you go, right?
We need to like play the Scooby-Doo music because mystery solved.
Oh, you.
Oh, hey, look at that. We're on the tangent again.
Yep, there we go. Alright, so who else? That was Bromms' favorite character, but who else do you guys have for very important? Well, like you said, we're not talking about Logan, because
No.
There's Dougal Keen.
Yeah, we could talk about Dougal. You want to talk about Dougal?
There's not much to say without spoiling, but, he was a mercenary, and he was at first hired by an Asura who wanted to find the Golem's Eye, which was this ruby that had some sort of magic about it that belonged to Blim, and it was supposed to advance Golemancy. And that didn't end so well. And so he was kind of arrested by the Seraph, and the only reason he was released was to be recruited by the Vigil to help find the Claw of the Con to create the peace treaty.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, you can find Dougal in-game walking around Lion's Arch. I would say we did a whole episode where we spoiled the entire length of Ghost of Ascalon story from start to finish. If you'd like more information about good old Dougal, that's a pretty good way to figure it out, because we go in depth with, like I said, full spoilers of the entire Ghost of Ascalon story. Queen Jennah, again, we kind of just talked about her briefly, but we don't really have that much, and up until very recently, we didn't really know much about her other than she, caused we have one more dragon in the world, and it's because of her. So she's the worst in that respect.
Well, she is also in her favor. She is, like I said before, she's very, very responsible for human and Char relations being where they are right now.
That's true.
And it's interesting because a lot of the people really like her because she seems to be legitimately a good ruler. Like, she's interested in making things better for her citizens. She's just not liked by the nobility because of that, and because of everything with the Char. So.
Yeah, and I mean, she does seem to be, arguably, from reading the book status, to be quite possibly the most powerful mesmer in the world. But she can only use that magic when it's plot effective to the story.
Right.
So it seems. Unless you count that weird little incident she pulled with Farron.
Yeah.
Where she, pretended to be... She made a clone of herself that eventually, turned out to be, oh, it's a clone, sorry, you almost died.
I still think that whole thing was pretty cool, though. I actually kind of like Jennah. I don't hate her. So, Seeing all that was pretty cool, but...
I think that Farron is, like, one of my favorite humans. He's so funny.
He's becoming one of mine as well. At first I didn't like him, and the more you see of him, he's just hilarious. And yeah, he's perfectly... I don't know. He's just an awesome character.
He was there for a lot of my storylines, so he kind of grew on me.
Gotcha.
Okay. I could see that. Yeah, especially if you played the noble storyline, you do meet Farron quite often, and you did get to see him in the South Sun story as well.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, he was the host of Divinity's Reach's fanciest cat competition.
That's what I hear. We learned that from some of the sound snippets and stuff like that. Too, you can find out who won and who lost on the ArenaNet SoundCloud page.
You definitely got to see a lot of him in South Sun, because he was only wearing those tiny little swimming short things.
Yeah, you get to see.
With the pavilion.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, they just seem to love to throw him in his boxers.
He's a very handsome devil.
I guess so. He's a handsome scoundrel, yeah.
Yes. He's like the Han Solo of...
Don't go that far. No, you stop right there.
In my storyline, I actually had to help him flirt with females.
Yep.
That is awesome.
So, good old Farron. Yeah, so... What else do we have as key human characters?
We have Ellen Keel, who I'm not like, but she is actually fairly important. Before the whole Captain's Council thing, she helped us find Canuck, who was basically aggravating all of the wildlife in South Sun. So she helped us to find and defeat him, and then she basically got in contact with the delegates at the Zephyr Sanctum, and because of all of that, she was eventually elected into the Captain's Council. So.
Yeah, I mean, I guess.
But it's interesting because she doesn't really have anything to do with Divinity's Reach so much. She's more
Yeah,
strictly Lion's Arch. So
a citizen of Lion's Arch.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is interesting how you have to kind of separate the two, even though she is a human.
yeah,
She doesn't really, doesn't take too much. It's more stock in the affairs of the Lion's Arch than of Divinity's Reach and true human civilization, as it were.
and I can't remember her name, and that's awful. But there was the human pirate that I think she leads the Aether Blades. If not, she's very prominent. But you have to fight her at the end of the Aether Blade dungeon.
Wow. Yeah, it was like what, one living story ago.
Yeah.
What the hell's her name? Anybody remember? Claire?
I think Google remembers.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I think.
My Trin.
That's right, My Trin. Yes, the one that that was involved with some of the craziness that happened in Lion's Arch during the Dragon Bash Festival.
Yes, and she is indeed captain of the Aether Blades. So.
Yeah.
She isn't anymore.
No, that's true. Very, very true.
Yes.
Trying to think, and we don't have none of the real leaders of anything dealing with the three orders are. I guess is it the leader of the Order of Whispers is a human? Correct me if I'm wrong.
I honestly don't. That's the one faction that I only have one character.
Yeah, it's real Darkwater, I think is how you pronounce her. Or Real, I think is her name. Well, she's I believe you find out that she eventually is revealed to be the Master of Whispers, I believe. But it's Master of Whispers is kind of no one's really supposed to know who the Master is. It's kind of like to protect the Master of Whispers, they kind of have a fake one. Right. Nobody really knows who it is.
Sort of like the Dread Pirate Roberts.
Yes, exactly. Just like the Dread Pirate Roberts. Only not as cool.
Only not as cool.
But apparently, she was assisted by Traherne in her struggle against her predecessor. Because, Traherne does all these things that no one actually has proof of. Funny how that works.
Yeah.
I'm on to you, Traherne. But yeah, the three mentors, none of the mentors are human.
Right.
So that's less interaction with humans past level, whatever it is, level 20 or 30 human story. Anybody else kind of call out to you guys as important human characters?
Obaya.
Go for it.
Oh, I can't say much.
Okay, well.
He's the founder of Lion's Arch. Or the rebuilder of New Lion's Arch.
Yeah, and again, that's unfortunately, like you said, one of those weird things where it's like, read the Sea of Sorrows. He's integral, almost responsible for the entire, reconstruction of Lion's Arch. So you need to, but we don't want to spoil any of Sea of Sorrows since the book is fairly new and it does an excellent job of telling the story of that. So I would highly, highly recommend that you read the Sea of Sorrows.
And if you can't, there's always the plaques that you could go around reading.
Yeah, the plaques do a fairly good job of spoiling everything.
They changed the one I was angry that they were spoiling at the docks.
Okay,
they changed it, and so it doesn't spoil anymore.
Yeah, because there were some, I think, a couple of our guild members, like, oh, I read all the plaques, and the one's like, well, I know what happened here.
I accidentally read it, and I was just like, oh my goodness, why did I do this?
Yeah,
I was
right?
like, I'm never reading a plaque again.
Yeah.
Be careful what you wish for when you read plaques, because you never know what you're going to get stuck with. And, ArenaNet does seem to have, and I love ArenaNet and I love Guild Wars, but they do seem to have a problem with spoiling things, like spoiling your the personal story and things with the achievements.
Yeah.
Yeah, the achievements have been pretty well. That's yeah. Anyway,
I mean, like, we all thought Farron was dead,
right.
and the achievement says rescued Farron from Scarlet's Playhouse.
I stopped looking at the achievements, and then the guild ruined it for me.
Yeah, that'll because I kind of did the same thing. I'm not looking at the achievements, and then of course, like as soon as the patch comes out, it's someone talking about it. Ah.
Yeah, so be wary with your achievements and your plaques, because they're just put in the game. It's more of a challenge to not look at the achievements and the plaques, and then, you'll be surprised by the story.
But if you can't read the story,
then read the plaques and look at the achievements.
Yeah.
There you go.
So, I'm trying to think if anybody really jumps out at me as another key character. Who are the humans?
There hasn't really been anybody as far as the living story is concerned that I can remember.
Yeah, outside of Alan Keel, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we might be done with like major key characters. Because, I mean, the characters that you have in, the Commoner and the Street Rat story are almost forgettable, honestly. And they're really not referenced any later. Like, your character in the Noble storyline is Lord Farron. And he's obviously come around a few times. Oh, I guess we could talk about, actually, I can't believe I almost forgot one of my absolute favorite characters in the game, Marjorie Delacroix. The coolest, most badass PI you will ever meet in Guild Wars.
Yes, then you have to talk about Kazmir.
Yeah, well, we'll get to her, but she's not nearly as cool as Marjorie Delacroix, who lives in a film noir movie, which I hope that's how she sees her whole life. In monologue film noir.
Yeah.
And like I said, I really wish this game could be sandbox enough where I could just give up my fight of the dragons and just CSI Divinity's Reach. And I'll hang out with my aviator sunglasses and make all my really cheesy jokes and then put them on, and then the Who will start in the background. It'll be a good time. But me and Marjorie.
Maybe next year, like.
I can hope. I honestly would like to see more out of her, especially if there's any kind of, even if it's just little kind of Easter egg things where we're talking about investigating something, and it's just like oh, so and so said like this needs to be, we need to figure this out, it needs to be investigated, and like you go there and there's like a business card on the ground, and it's like, go see so and so in Lion's Arch, case solved, and it's like a business card that says like MD on it, and like she solved it.
Little chibi versions of her just run across the screen.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I just definitely a very interesting character, and probably so interesting because she's so mysterious. Because we only have that little bit of knowledge about how she was like this amazing PI, and then like we never hear from her again.
Yeah.
I don't even think we can get back into that instance where she was.
No, I don't think so.
I think that's closed off. So, like, maybe to me she's just that interesting because she's so mysterious. And I feel like that was the situation with Kazmir until she started talking again.
Did you mean the bar instance where you meet her?
Yeah.
You can get back in there, but she's not there.
Oh, well, then it's not even worth it. But
well, you can always use that item that allows you to see the cutscene again. But then you have to see Logan.
Yeah.
I know. But yeah, I guess since I talked about Marjorie, I should talk about Kazmir. And again, like I was just saying, she's one of those ones that the mystery is what made her so appealing to most people. And then when we learned more about her, then she became less interesting.
Well, her original story was pretty good.
Yeah, when we meet her in South Sun.
Yeah, well, like they had the short story up about her.
Oh, I didn't even read it. I don't think. Would you like to enlighten us on that?
Let me bring it back up. Scanning through it again to refresh my memory.
Sure. And again, we were first introduced to Kazmir in the South Sun, the Return to South Sun patch, where we met her in her bikini hanging out with Farron and his Speedo on the beach.
Yes, it was a very interesting introduction.
She was talking all about the Dragon Bash and how he said that he didn't think it was a good idea, I believe. And she's like, no, it's important that we celebrate, our victory over the dragons to, reinsure, and bring happiness, and it'll help, calm the masses and give everybody something to rally behind. So, Claire, are you ready?
Yeah, basically the story centers around Kiel coming to South Sun, but it gets to Kazmir, and it's basically a conversation about the island, and it's kind snark about Farron.
Okay.
She comes across as a very kind person, but someone who is also kind of funny.
Okay.
Instead, it comes off as ditzy in the next living story with
Marjorie.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember how excited Casey was when she first saw Kazmir, because she just seemed like this kind of badass, had it together chick, and in some of the images we had her in this armor, and she looked super badass. And then, she becomes the ditzy, giggly little bubbly blonde when you meet her with Marjorie Delacqua, where she's like, oh my god, I can't believe I get to go with Marjorie. Oh my god, I'm so excited. And then it's like, wow, you were this snarky badass, and now you're just a dumb blonde.
Yeah.
So, I hope that's kind of why, as much as I would love to see more from Marjorie Delacqua, I've seen how bad the living story can make you. So maybe being as mysterious as she is a better thing. So, yeah, I think that'll probably do it for key characters, I would think, right?
I think so.
Claire?
I mean, there's a million Guild Wars 1 characters we could talk about, but we're sticking to Guild Wars 2. Then...
Yeah, we'll be here forever if I let you run on about Guild Wars 1 characters.
See, I personally think my human is my favorite character.
Well,
there you go.
Yeah, I kind of feel a little bit of similar. But again, we constantly talk up about how Claire is so much in Guild Wars 1, so I would like to remind everybody that you can go to Blogspot, or projecttyria.blogspot.com?
Right.
projecttyria.blogspot.com to view Claire's or Alucardalina's website, which is all about comparisons between pre-searing and post-searing Ascalon, as well as Guild Wars 1 to Guild Wars 2, comparison shots of the landscape, things like that, to show you here's what it looked like 250 years ago, here it is, quote-unquote, today. And it's extremely interesting. I know a lot of people, as soon as they learn about this, especially fans of Guild Wars 1, get blown away by the amount of research and things that she's done, so it's definitely worth checking out. Make sure you they can subscribe to you on there. You have an RSS feed or a way that you can subscribe?
Yeah.
Okay, so make sure, so this way you get the updates as soon as they come out. Also, you can, like her on Facebook and things like that. As well as, with her being here so often, we can have her give us quick updates if there's anything going on, or we'll be sure to mention it on the podcast as well. But yeah, so I just wanted to plug her a little bit. But do you guys have any, before we kind of wrap this up, which we kind of ran a little long, I think, but did you guys have any speculation? I mean, we kind of blended that in with, as we were talking about the White Mantle and things like that, but speculation or interesting things you'd like to see the human storyline take in the future?
I just think, kind of what we talked about before, I think Codicus is going to have something major to do with the whole bandit thing. I wouldn't be surprised at all if there's some kind of uprising where he tries to take power with the other ministers. Otherwise, that's about it. I mean, yeah, that's about it for me.
Yeah,
Right.
I'm done with like the Centaur stuff, basically.
Okay.
I want us to reach out to them and be like, be our friends for now, please.
Yeah. Alright, well, I guess that'll pretty much bring it to the end of us. Wow, the end of the show. Jesus.
I don't know what you're planning on doing, but wow.
See you guys later. Wahahaha.
I don't think I want to be on this show anymore.
You won't be.
You didn't read the fine print.
But yeah, so for the Chronicles of Tyria Lorecast, I am Lagwyn.
I'm Claire.
And I'm Bromms.
Oh, we did it again twice in a row. And we will see you next time.